I'm Mark Jarvis. I'm CEO and chair of Giga Metals. We've got a very large, low-grade, open-pittable nickel cobalt sulphide deposit in north central British Columbia that we are working diligently to develop.
Lovely to see you. It's been a while. Thanks for coming back on. Obviously, the big news of the day, and your share price reflects it, it's a 30% pop. There is the Mitsubishi Corporation JV on the Turnagain nickel project. So first of all, you happy with the response from the market?
You know, I mean, it's a beginning. I think Mitsubishi got a fantastic deal. But for us, it was a good deal because it's so much better than our market cap. So, or our market cap at the time. So the terms of the deal give a project valuation where we're still not really trading to that project valuation. But I think even more important is what happens next.
No, I agree with you, but let's just look at some of these moving parts, right? You said Mitsubishi got a great deal, but you're not necessarily happy about that. Is that a reflection of, well, nickel had a good run of it, it's going to come off like a lot of things have come off, bases in terms of metals have come off. The timing wasn't quite right. It wasn't quite what you wanted it to be. I mean, why this feels negative?
No, I think what it is is that Mitsubishi got in basically at a price that reflects how much money we've spent on this project over the last few years. So they got in basically at the same price as we did. However, they bring so much to the table. We get Mitsubishi as a partner. So I think they got like a really good deal. But, you know, they've got in-house expertise in terms of mining. And I mean, we've just been through a due diligence that you wouldn't believe how thorough it is. They've got in-house mining engineers, in-house metallurgists. They know what they're doing in the mining business. They've got a model where they like to own a minority interest in an operating mine at the end of the day. And that's what they've done all over the world. They've got partners like, you know, BHP, Rio Tinto, Teck, you know, Anglo, Glencore. It just goes on. And they like to have that non-operating minority interest and just have the offtake.
Okay, well, let's talk about this because I've worked for Japanese companies, and I think most people will recognize the name or the brand Mitsubishi from their cars. But they're a bit more than that, aren't they? So, I mean, why and which bit of the Mitsubishi Corporation are you dealing with? Is it just on the EV side?
Yeah, we're dealing with their materials division. And then within that, they've set up a battery metals division or a critical metals division. They're mostly looking for nickel and lithium.
Right. Okay.
And they're really interested in projects that have good environmental credentials. They're very serious about, you know, I mean, ESG, everybody goes ESG, blah, 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 ESG. Mitsubishi's serious about it. It's a core value for them. And they won't do a project if they don't like the environmental impact of it.
Let's come back to that because I don't want to get distracted by that, okay? Because there's lots of ways you can interpret that. Let's focus on the deal, okay? So cash consideration, $8 million, right? Yep. They will get what for that? 15% equity interest in Hard Creek? Is that it?
So we created a subsidiary corporation, Hard Creek Nickel, and we put all of the assets to do with the Turnagain project in the subsidiary. They have now bought a 15% interest in that subsidiary. So we are now an 85% owner of our subsidiary. They're a 15% owner. We are the operator. And the deal is really that simple. We're going to use that money to produce a pre-feasibility report and including a report, you know, a separate pre-feasibility level report about adding on a pressure oxidation circuit to create MHP. And actually with a POX circuit, you can create anything you want going forward. MHP is a very hot item right now in the battery world. That's the form of nickel and cobalt that people are just paying through the nose for. They just love it.
Right.
So
Okay. So let's just do the maths here. So 15%, they put in 8 million. It could have been 9 million. It made the maths easier, but it's just under 6 million. So was I? Sorry, let me get this right. It's for 15%, 8 million. So what does that value the company at, Hard Creek?
it values the project at just under 54 million.
Right. Compared to your current valuation,
Our market cap, what's the stock trading at right now? Can you see
about
it?
40 cents.
40 cents. That's about 40 million,
Yeah.
just under $40 million.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's not really up to what they gave it as a project valuation.
Okay.
And however, in my view, if we were in a good market, we would be trading it well above that project valuation because the market would be factoring in, holy smokes. Okay, they've got Mitsubishi as a partner. Look what Mitsubishi brings. I mean, they've got a bank in the group that funds construction of mines.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got relationships with major mining companies all over the world. And not only that, but I can't tell you anything about what other projects they've looked at because they don't talk about it. They're honorable. They won't breach a confidentiality agreement. But I know how thorough they are. And I would bet you that they have looked at every greenfields project on the planet. And so to me, the fact that they've settled on the Turnagain project is an incredible validation of the project.
Right. So they've settled on it, but what exactly do they get for 15%? What's their expectation of you, and what's your expectation of them? You've mentioned the Mitsubishi Bank, and I guess you're looking straight to their balance sheet and a bit of technical know-how. But can you balance that out? Let's start with them. What do they think they're getting? Well,
they're getting 15% of the project and 15% of the offtake. They are not getting an offtake deal.
Okay.
We were willing. I actually don't want to get into all of the twists and turns of the negotiation, but it's really as simple as stated. They get 15% of the project. They get 15% of the company that owns the project for their $8 million, and going forward, they're going to have to fund 15%. We're going to take this $8 million and spend it to produce the pre-feasibility studies. Going forward, beyond that, they're going to have to fund their 15% of whatever we're doing as we move on to full feasibility, the environmental assessments, and so forth.
So what's your They get 15% of the production at some point in the future. That's all they get. Do they get first option over anything above that? If they first right of refusal, as it were. No. Okay, so it's open. Okay. Keeps competitive tension going there. Do you think having them in kind of puts other people off, or do you think you've framed this and written the agreement in a way which won't be off-putting for others?
Oh no, I think it's going to turn the lights on in a lot of places. I mean, okay, because we're talking to already car companies and battery companies. I mean, we're talking to the people that really want a long-term, reliable supply of nickel. And, I know that they're talking to lots of people, but in my conversations with different automobile and battery companies, I have not met a single mining engineer. So, I mean, these people are starting from scratch and trying to differentiate between this project and that project and which project is the one I should go for, but they don't have the internal capacity to make that judgment. I think Mitsubishi making this move sends a signal to those people that, okay, here's a company that is clearly capable of doing that due diligence, and this is the project that they have chosen. So I believe it's going to help us in our ongoing discussions with the car and battery companies. And our intention is to sell another small piece of the project at a much higher project valuation than Mitsubishi got.
Okay, so you're going to take that $8 million, spend it on doing a pre-fees. Hopefully the market reacts to that and you get a higher valuation. And is that the point at which you would then sell another chunk of the business, or would you go out and raise equity in the markets and continue through to a feasibility study and then sell a chunk of the company? Because you can phase this and either have a slightly non-dilutive attitude, is I will sell a bit of this project level to another entity. Would you consider selling it? Would you consider selling another chunk to Mitsubishi, or are they not allowed back at the table? How does it work?
No, they're allowed back at the table.
Right.
But, it'll be at whatever price everyone else is paying. I mean, we have no intention of selling down our share of Hard Creek Nickel of the subsidiary to below 51%.
Okay.
We have no intention of doing that.
Right.
And in fact, it would probably be, I'd like to retain about 65% at the end of the day.
Okay. There's a number, or there's a percentage where it gets quite awkward, isn't there? Because we've seen a few companies come on here and they're basically, the liquidity is jammed because they're sitting with a significant shareholder, who's got an alternative set of plans and approach the company to the board who are running the company. So again, there's a delicate balance or delicate dance to be had there. Is it better that you have an alternative or another one or two, significant minority shareholder?
I think one more significant minority shareholder would be perfect. And then let's just drive on towards feasibility. Let's get our construction permits and so forth.
Right.
I want enough money to get shovel ready.
Okay.
I want to accelerate development of this.
Okay. Can I talk about what Mitsubishi's expectation of you are? You're going to be the project manager on this. Are there fees in that, or does that come out of the 8 million, or do you have to fend for yourself? I mean, how does that work?
We're going to negotiate later after we get the pre-feasibility done, what our management fees would be to manage going all the way to feasibility and running all that. In the meantime, I mean, everything directly attributable to the project gets billed to the pre-feasibility. So,
right.
Geologists who do nothing but work on the project, our in-house engineer, for example, we're going to put 75 or 80% of his time, because he does some corporate stuff as well. My time isn't booked to that. Overhead, rent isn't booked to that for now. I mean, we have left that to negotiate later. Right.
And does Mitsubishi have any say around the valuation at post pre-fees? I mean, obviously the significant minority, but have they got any input to that? How do you, because you want to drive as high as possible, but it may not reach their thresholds. Do you know what I mean? So it's, again, an interesting one.
Oh, well, put it this way. I think for the next minority interest, we are free to operate as we wish. And we're free to create an auction if we wish. And frankly, if you think about it from Mitsubishi's point of view, they got in at what I think is an incredibly good price. I mean, it was a fair deal, but they don't give money away, those people. But it's going to make them look pretty good if our next piece is sold for a better valuation than what they paid.
And what's the timing on the pre-fees? When would you be looking to put that out by?
Well, what we've said is first half of 2023. I think we're shooting for the end of the first quarter.
Right.
But, there's so many moving parts. You never know for sure. So we've stated first half of 2023.
Right. So one of the moving parts out there at the moment is headlines around, I think there's a lot of headlines around numbers coming out of China. This zero COVID stance that they're taking is making people nervous, because it's, to put it mildly, it's making people nervous. So I guess you've got we'll have the money to kind of move this forward through the delivery of a PFS. There's a lot of, again, nervous CEOs out there thinking, well, crikey, in this inflationary environment, we just don't know what's going to come out the other side. Going from PA to PFS, there's usually a bit of movement in terms of the cost, the CapEx, the OpEx, etc. We've seen 40, 50, even one case, 60% increases. Are you rushing into this? Is that the right course of action? Should you be perhaps biding your time with, headlines coming out of China like they are, inflation's still rampant?
Well, I don't think there's any way to rush a project like this for one thing, Matthew. It's as we stand here today, it's going to be 5 years before we're in production. So you take a 5-year timeline, and what's going to happen with zero COVID in that time? It will resolve itself one way or another. Either China will destroy itself with this idiotic policy, or it will move beyond that policy and get back to normal. And my money would be on the latter. So just overall, I mean, base metals have been crushed by this COVID policy in China, including copper. And but this whole thematic of electrifying the world hasn't gone away. It's still happening. And so maybe you hit a speed bump on the road to, electrification of the world. But that's all it is. It's you'll be looking at that in the rearview mirror.
No, I agree with you, Mark. I agree with you on that one. I was really thinking towards the sort of accelerating towards the next point where you need to raise some capital. You said, okay, we'll probably sell another little chunk of the project away, and that'll bring some more capital in. But you want to, do you take the view of, oh crikey, in this environment, will I get the value? Again, will I get the value that I think should be attributed to this or not? Or do you say, do you know what? It is what it is. I'll get the money and it'll get me through to the next phase. And at some point, I'll catch up. The valuation will backfill itself, as it were. So some people are tippy-toeing around that decision making. Others are saying, look, there's never a kind of right time or a wrong time. It's just get on with it. And move forward to the position where you can get into production. So where do you sit in those board discussions?
Well, I'm just looking for the least dilutive way possible to get there.
But you can't control that. You can't control that. That is what I'm saying.
No, but I mean, we talked before, and I told you before that I was looking to get investment at the project level, and you were skeptical about that because why would anyone do that? And I mean, I understood your skepticism. But I also have the sense that the market is coming to us. So, I mean, we don't have an immediate need to raise equity. And so we don't have any desire to raise equity at this moment at these prices. That could change. I mean, I'm not making any promises that I will never issue any more stock, but, I've always managed to keep this company financed and managed to keep it going forward. I'm not unrealistic. However, I do believe that the market is still coming to us. I think the battery makers and the automakers in particular, whole paradigm of supply chain has changed. And it's early in that change. They haven't figured this out yet. But the whole just-in-time inventory model where you're sourcing materials from around the world and, everything's zipping around the world, the war in Europe has called that into question. People are going, okay, if China invades Taiwan, what happens to my supply chain then? And the general conclusion is we need a supply chain closer to home. We need a supply chain in politically stable countries that aren't going to go to war willy-nilly. And in some cases, we need to own parts of the supply chain just to be sure that we've got the supply if it's critical. And so that's where, the thinking has gotten there, but it's still early days. And they realize they need nickel. They realize they need lithium. And those are the two most critical, I think. They also realize that they need rare earths. But certainly they need nickel, they need cobalt. And we now have a transaction with the company that says, maybe this is the project. And there's reasons why Mitsubishi chose us.
Well, tell me about those, because I think you alluded to earlier. Mitsubishi will be placing lots of small bets. 8 million to Mitsubishi Corporation is nothing. It's not less than pocket change, right? So they'll be placing lots and lots of bets. They'll be speaking to lots and lots of companies and hoping that one of you guys pulls it off, right? That's the reality of how this works. And I say that in the context of they have invested, Mitsubishi and many other automotive manufacturers and many OEMs, more broadly, are investing hundreds of billions of dollars building infrastructure, which needs to secure a supply chain, right? So that's the reason they're placing lots of these bets. And And if it works for you, if you are able to deliver what you think you can deliver, they'll be pleased, because it's a case of we need all of the above. Right, I don't have any favorite children in this race. I think we need all of them to cross the line, for sure. So, how do they grade you during all of this whole process? And maybe you don't want them to kind of take over the project too early. You want to, I guess, capture more of the value.
Intention. I don't believe they've got any intention of taking over the project. Right. They don't want to operate. They want to be a supportive minority partner with whoever is operating the project, whether that's us or whether at the end of the day it's a major mining corporation. But
they want 100% of the offtake for projects like this. They
that's what they're charged with. And they may get there.
Right.
It depends. It depends. I mean, put it this way: Mitsubishi are very good at marketing, and let's say you're a big copper company or a big iron ore company or something, and you decide to get into nickel, and here's your nickel project that you're going to take. Do you really want to go to the expense of setting up a completely green nickel marketing department? Or would you rather have somebody that knows what they're doing and has vast experience in marketing nickel, like Mitsubishi handled the marketing? There's a very good case to be made that Mitsubishi could end up with most, if not all, of the offtake. Now, on the other hand, if you're a car company or a battery company, you're buying in because you want your piece of it. So, there's that dynamic. But, at the end of the day, who knows? We'll have to see. But the marketing is up for grabs at this point.
Okay, but I guess the important bit here is that we'll restate it again. These guys are spending billions of dollars in building, hundreds of billions of dollars building these large infrastructures. Right? They need to kind of feed the beast, as it were. Right. They're not actually here, nor do they care about your share price. It's about securing that supply chain because they capture value all the way down the supply chain. So how do you get that balance between doing the things which will drive your share price and giving them what they want? Or at the moment, 15%, they have to just suck up and deal with whatever decisions you make. I mean, how does that work? You've got to have a relationship, haven't you?
Oh, yeah, we've got a relationship, and basically we're very transparent with them. So we're not gonna sell a minority interest to someone that they don't like or that they don't want to do business with. We're careful about that. We're respectful about that. But, the major car companies, the major battery companies, they like those companies. So, just getting back to something you were asking earlier is, why us? I mean, why, how do they grade us? Again, I don't know who else they're looking at. I assume that they're looking at everything in the world. Okay. But our project is the lowest risk, technically. So, it's low risk because of the jurisdiction, for one thing. Any Canadian project is low risk from a jurisdictional perspective. But our project technically is low risk because 99% of the nickel and cobalt are in one sulphide mineral, pentlandite. So all you have to do is crush it, crush the rock, grind the rock, put it through froth flotation, and recover pentlandite and suppress everything else. That is so simple. That simplicity spells reliability. It also spells, a much shorter processing chain. And crush it, grind it, float it. That's so simple. There's no magnetic separation. There's, to separate out of where you're right. There's no de-sliming circuits because there's all sorts of weird alteration minerals in there to screw up the metallurgy. None of that is required, and that makes it simple. So that is, I just can't emphasize enough how strong that makes our project. If you're going to spend $2 billion to build a mine, you want to have confidence that it's going to work.
Well, yeah, you do. You want to make sure it works, and you want to make sure it's economic, and you want to make sure the scale is there to help with the economics. So, I get that. We've spoken about that ad nauseum, previously. Sure. Okay. So just I'm trying to work out where you are, because I'm trying to looking to the future. There's a phase 1 to your project and potential phase 2. So we're, I guess, step 1 of phase 1. You get some money in, get yourself a strategic partner, and you kind of outline the way you see that moving forward. The kind of I'm trying to work out what the other options on the table are for you in terms of who else you talk to now versus who else you would talk to after a PFS. Are there conversations being set up for the PFS stage, as it were? Is it just a case of head down and get on with it?
Put it this way, we're kind of marching forward. Anyone that we're having serious discussions with has signed an NDA. And so they can see the work that's ongoing. They can see the trade-off studies that we've already done. I can't get into specifics, but some of the trade-off studies we've already done look quite positive. So, and we've got still a lot of work to do a PFS, but I suspect that if a company says, okay, well, I'm going to sit back and wait for the PFS to be done before I make my move, they may be too late. We'll see.
Why? Okay, you spent a lot of time telling me why they picked you, and that's fine, accept that. Why did you pick them? Was it a case of we needed something? Because, North American critical minerals list, North American car manufacturers, OEMs, they're talking a good game, and some of them are placing bets. We're seeing Ford and GM make moves on the lithium front. Why did you not pick a North American partner? I know Mitsubishi has offices across the US, but they're not an American company. So why not pick a North American partner?
Well, it was just something that organically evolved. I mean, we're going through an internal process. And again, I mean, if you look at Martin Beidrich, who's our president and who led all this and who gets, credit for all this, we work shoulder to shoulder. But Martin is the guy that used to work for Shareholder. He used to sell nickel and cobalt all over the world to end users. He used to sell nickel and cobalt to Mitsubishi, Mitsui, all of the trading companies as well he had relationships with. We just started talking to whoever would listen. Mitsubishi listened. And
were they the only ones listening? That's what I'm trying to get at. It's like, why aren't the North American car manufacturers or OEMs talking or listening to you about your project now? Because you're going to need that, I think. Listening to the narrative right now, you need it.
For one thing, one of the car companies that we've talked to, major name, North American name, a year ago, they had no mandate to invest in projects. So, nice to talk to you. See you later. They came back. We now have a mandate to invest in projects. So it's just their thought process is moving at a certain speed. And again, to this date, talking to a car company, talking to a battery company, I have yet to meet a mining engineer. And I think that they're going to have to realize that, if they're going to evaluate projects, they actually need to have an in-house mining engineer to say, well, this one's good and this one's not. And, absent that,
that's amazing. That's amazing change in attitude and narrative. And you could never imagine, when we first started talking all those years and months ago, you can never imagine the car manufacturers going upstream because they didn't want the risk. And moves from people like Tesla, I think, sort of changed the way the dynamic and also the variables, as it were, in terms of these assessments. Because it's always been like traders. Yeah. They'd have traders in there, and they'd go around to trading houses. And I think that's a really big, important point you make there. I think we'll start to see more of that, or I hope we will. Well, if
they don't hire mining engineers, then they're going to have to rely on the fact that Mitsubishi did their due diligence, And I think they can rely on that. I think getting Mitsubishi in as a partner is going to accelerate things for us because it does give that stamp of, and my God, the due diligence we went through. I mean, you used to work for a Japanese company.
Yeah.
Yes, a very, very detailed due diligence. And they also hired an outside engineering firm to get their take on it. I won't mention the name, but it's a firm that some people call the deal killers. At some point, this engineering firm said, the assumptions in the PEA are reasonable. And we were just all high-fiving because, you do not get higher praise than that from a serious engineering firm. The assumptions in our PEA were reasonable. That's like gold. So anyways, that's when I felt confident that we would, end up with this transaction completed.
Right. Okay. I think I understand all the moving parts in this one. So just we know what you've got to do in the short term between now and end of first half of next year. Is there anything else that, because we're sort of excited and focused on that. Is there anything else happening in the background in terms of other parts of the company or that we
no,
need
really,
to know about?
We are. This is our focus. This is our entire focus.
Right. Okay. Well, in which case, thanks for the update and congrats. I think the market's liked it. You may not appreciate how much they liked it. Maybe they've given some time to digest and understand it. Will there be news over the course of whatever it is that you're doing on the PFS that you will be coming out with, or is there a kind of long quiet period coming up?
I think it's a pretty long quiet period.
Okay.
I don't think this is an exciting news-driven period. It's just that suddenly the odds of this becoming a mine have gone way up.
Right.
And the other thing is, the other thing that I hope will change is Matthew, we have zero analyst coverage. Maybe an analyst will notice and say, maybe this is worth looking at. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe the fact that Mitsubishi chose this project first amongst all others tells me that I should be taking a serious look.
We shall see. I think it's good news. I think, from my experience of Japanese companies, no one wants to lose face. Believe me. So it's not a decision that's taken lightly.
No, it's not.
So we will follow you eagerly over the next few months, and we look forward to the PFS coming out and reaffirming the numbers, and hopefully the market does calm down. But this is a long game, so good luck with it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Matthew. A pleasure as always.